Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are looking at a cultural artifact that, on paper, sounds like the result of a fever dream.
It really does.
Or, maybe a high-stakes game of Mad Libs, played by Hollywood executives and Chinese investors during a particularly wild lunch meeting.
That's a perfect way to put it. It's one of those projects where the elevator pitch alone must have been like 5 minutes of pure confusion, followed by a frantic, wait, really?
Exactly. Picture this. It is the Han Dynasty in China. You have the Gobi Desert, vast, unforgiving, ancient.
Right.
And in the middle of this desert, you have martial arts legend Jackie Chan. Okay, standard territory so far. But standing across from him is John Cusack.
In Roman armor.
Wearing Roman armor.
Yeah.
And lurking in the background is the big bad, Adrien Brody.
It's just one of the most unusual casting lineups in recent action movie history. It's the kind of thing where you have to double-check the poster to make sure your eyes aren't playing tricks on you.
They're not.
You expect Jackie Chan. You absolutely do not expect the guy from High Fidelity and Say Anything to be commanding a Roman legion.
We are talking, of course, about the 2015 historical action epic, Dragon Blade. And honestly, I've been dying to unpack this one because it isn't just a movie. It is a massive collision of worlds.
A huge one.
We've got a $65 million budget. We've got Roman legions fighting Chinese protection squads. And we have a reception history that is completely split down the middle, depending on which side of the planet you live on.
It is a fascinating case study. I mean, you have this massive commercial success in China and then this confusing, often critical reception in the West.
Right.
But beyond the box office numbers, what we really have here is a film that's trying to do something very specific culturally. It's attempting to blend East and West styles of filmmaking while basing its entire narrative on this sliver of historical speculation that historians have been arguing about for decades.
Exactly. And that is our mission today. We're going to dig into the source material, specifically the detailed breakdown of the film's production, its plot, its history, to figure out how this movie got made, what it's actually about, and the big question, did Roman soldiers really wander into ancient China?
It's a valid question, and the answer is, well, it's more complex than a simple yes or no, though the movie certainly picks a lane.
So grab your gladius and your dhow, because we're heading to the Silk Road. Let's start with the setup, because for a movie with such big stars, the premise is surprisingly intricate. This isn't just good guys versus bad guys in a field.
No, it's quite political, actually, to start with, which provides a lot of necessary context for the era. The year is set during the Han Dynasty period, and Jackie Chan plays a character named Huo An.
Huo An, okay.
Now, usually when we see Chan in a period piece, he's, a general or a rebel, something like that. But here, he has a very specific, almost bureaucratic job title. He is the captain of the Silk Road Protection Squad.
Silk Road Protection Squad. That sounds almost like a modern government agency.
It does, doesn't it?
Or a specialized task force you'd see in, like, a procedural drama.
Yeah. And it functions like one. The source material describes this squad as a peacekeeping, customs clearing organization in the Western regions. They aren't there to conquer territory for the emperor. They are there to stop battles between the diverse ethnic groups in the region.
So their mandate is stability, not expansion.
That's it.
So he's basically a UN peacekeeper in the year 48 BC.
That is a very apt comparison, a very apt one. The notes mention he's stopping fights between Indians and Xiongnu warriors. He's a super cop of the ancient desert.
Wow.
And this actually connects to something personal for Jackie Chan.
How so? Is this, like, reflecting his own philosophy?
Very much so. The source material highlights that Chan specifically wanted to make this film to express a message of peace for the world. He's quoted as saying he wanted to make a movie called Peace because of all the conflict he saw in the news at the time.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense then.
So Huo An is really an embodiment of that philosophy. He creates a buffer zone where trade can happen, where different cultures can exist without killing each other. He fights, but only to stop others from fighting.
Which is a noble goal.
Mm-hmm.
But, as is tradition in these kinds of action movies, no good deed goes unpunished.
Never.
You can't have a movie about peace without a massive conflict to kick it all off.
Precisely. And the conflict begins internally. The protection squad gets framed. They find gold coins, bribes, hidden inside the corpses of enemies they had neutralized.
That's a gruesome place to hide money.
It is.
Also, incredibly unsanitary.
It's effective, though. It looks like corruption coming from within the ranks. I mean, the optics are terrible for a squad that claims to be neutral.
So Huo An and his entire squad are stripped of their rank. And this is the inciting incident that moves us to the main location of the film.
Exactly.
They aren't executed, but they are sentenced to hard labor at a place called the Wild Geese Gate.
Which is described as a ruined fortress on the fringe of the western regions. It's a miserable place. You got prisoners, peasants, and nomads, all forced to rebuild this fort under a Turkic commander who isn't exactly friendly.
A real melting pot of misery.
Dust and forced labor, that's the vibe.
So there they are, hauling stones, rebuilding walls, probably thinking their lives are over. And then, looking out over the horizon, they see a dust cloud.
Yep.
And in a movie like this, a dust cloud never means good news.
Enter the Romans.
This is the moment the trailer is built around. A Roman legion, battered and exhausted, shows up at the gate in the middle of China. And leading him is General Lucius, led by John Cusack.
Now, in the film's logic, this is a highly tense moment.
Yeah.
The commander of the Wild Geese Gate tries to stop them and fails. His arrows probably bounce right off the shields.
Sure.
The Romans are disciplined, they are desperate, and they are superior in formation. So Huo An, even though he's a prisoner, rides out to duel Lucius.
And I love the detail here. It's Jackie Chan versus John Cusack, East versus West, the GN sword versus the gladius.
It's the matchup you never knew you needed.
They fight, but the source notes it ends in a stalemate. Why? Is it just to show they are equals?
Partly that, but there is an environmental factor. A massive sandstorm is coming. But that's not the only reason the fight stops. This is where we see that character trait of Huo An we mentioned earlier, the peacemaker.
Okay.
He notices something about the Roman troops during the fight.
They aren't just an invasion force. They're starving.
Starving. And they're carrying a little boy, a blind boy named Publius.
Right. This is the humanizing moment. Publius is actually the youngest son of Marcus Licinius Crassus.
A very famous historical Roman figure known for his immense wealth and his disastrous military campaigns.
Right. So Huo An sees the child, sees the exhaustion in the soldiers' eyes, and decides to let them into the fortress to take shelter.
Defying the orders of the fortress commander, I should add.
It's a classic enemy of my enemy is my friend, or rather, humanity before politics moment. This kicks off what I think is the most wholesome and perhaps the most Jackie Chan part of the movie. We move into segment 2, which I'm calling building bridges.
Literally.
Because literally, that's what they do. They fix the fort.
It is a full-on cross-cultural exchange montage. The Romans are inside, they recover, and the next day they see the Chinese workers struggling to rebuild the fortress walls.
And the Chinese methods are not great.
The film portrays them as slow, perhaps a bit outdated in this specific region, or maybe just disorganized due to the prison setting. So Lucius steps up.
The Romans break out their superior engineering skills. They start showing the locals how to lay bricks, use pulleys, build fortifications the Roman way.
It's highly symbolic. You have these two great empires, Han, China, and Rome, collaborating on infrastructure. The source mentions this boosts morale and happiness among all the inhabitants.
It's suggesting that if we just put down our weapons and picked up our trowels, we could build something amazing.
Infrastructure as diplomacy.
And it cements the friendship between Huo An and Lucius. They go from enemies to bros. There are scenes of them drinking together, training together.
Yeah, that whole sequence.
Huo An even sends some of his men to help Lucius's envoys contact the Parthian Empire. It's this great guys being dudes moment, but on a geopolitical scale.
And Huo An is even made an honorary centurion by the little boy, Publius.
That's a huge deal.
It implies a deep level of trust. Being named a centurion by a Roman noble is no small gesture. It signifies that Huo An is seen as an equal in honor and capability.
But as we know, this peace can't last. We have to find out why a Roman legion is wandering around the Gobi Desert.
They're not on a sightseeing tour.
Right, they didn't just take a wrong turn at Turkey. Unpack the backstory for us. Who are they running from?
They are fleeing Tiberius.
Played by Adrien Brody. And let's be honest, Adrien Brody's making choices in this movie.
He certainly is. In the context of this film, Tiberius is painted as an absolute monster. He's a ruthless Roman consul. The film alleges he murdered his own father, Crassus.
His own father?
Yes. And blinded his younger brother, Publius. And is now marching on the Silk Road with 100,000 soldiers.
Talk about family drama. He killed his dad and blinded his little brother. That is Shakespearean villainy. That's cartoonishly evil.
It establishes the stakes perfectly, though. Lucius isn't just a deserter. He's a protector trying to save the rightful heir from a usurper.
So it makes the Romans sympathetic figures rather than imperialist invaders.
Exactly. And now that threat has arrived at Huo An's doorstep.
So we have the setup, we have the friendship, now we need the tragedy. And Dragonblade apparently does not pull its punches here. I was surprised by how dark the synopsis gets after the fun-building montage.
It takes a very sharp, very dark turn. This brings us to the climax of the film. Huo An realizes Tiberius is a threat to the entire Silk Road, not just the Romans. So he leaves to get reinforcements, thinking he can rally the other nations.
But while he's gone.
Yeah.
Betrayal. Because of course.
It turns out Huo An's second-in-command was the one who framed the squad in the beginning. He wants to be the commanding prefect, so he cuts a deal with Tiberius. He sells out his own people for a promotion.
And this leads to an attack on the home front. And this part sounds devastating. Huo An's wife, she's a school teacher for orphans.
Yes, she's like the moral center of the film. The source describes her as a gentle woman. When the traitor sends soldiers to attack, she tries to save the children under her care.
And she's mortally wounded in the process.
She is.
And her dying wish is for Huo An to protect the orphans. That is heavy. It shifts the movie from a fun historical romp into a revenge tragedy.
And it gets worse for the Romans, doesn't it?
Much worse from the sounds of it.
Much worse. Lucius is betrayed and captured. He's taken to the city of Huron, where Tiberius is camped. And the film commits to the villainy of Tiberius here. He forces the blind boy Publius to commit suicide.
Whoa, okay, that is incredibly bleak. They killed the kid.
They did. It destroys any possibility of redemption for the villain, and Lucius is brutally tortured. When Huo An finally breaks into the cell to rescue him, it's too late.
He's just broken.
Burnt, broken, and too damaged to escape.
This is the emotional peak the outline mentions. Lucius begs Huo An to kill him, to end his suffering.
And Huo An, the man of peace, the man whose entire creed is about saving lives, has to tearfully agree. He performs a mercy killing on his friend. It's a pivotal moment for the character. Sometimes the only way to save someone from pain is to let them go.
That sets the stage for the final showdown. You've got Huo An grieving his wife and his friend. You've got the remaining Romans who have lost their general and their prince. And you've got a massive army of bad guys.
The final battle is described as overwhelming. Huo An and the Romans are outnumbered. But then we get the cavalry arrives moment.
The classic trope.
Nomadic hordes, the people Huo An had befriended earlier in the film, the Indians, the Xiongnu, they all join the fight.
It's the Avengers Assemble moment of the Silk Road. All the tribes uniting against the tyrant. But even that isn't enough, right? The source says they still suffer heavy casualties.
Correct. It's not an easy win. The Xiongnu warriors, the Wild Geese Gate commander, many of them fall. It looks like they are going to lose. But the true turning point comes from the west. A Parthian army arrives.
These are the guys Lucius's envoys were trying to reach earlier.
The very same.
The actual empire that killed Crassus in real history.
Exactly. But in the movie, they are there to avenge Crassus. Remember, Tiberius killed him, and restore peace between Rome and Parthia. They turn the tide.
So Tiberius realizes he's lost.
He does. His generals, seeing the Parthians and realizing Tiberius is a usurper, tell him to surrender.
But does Adrien Brody surrender? I don't think so. That's not how you play a villain like this.
He refuses. He fights a duel with Huo An, and in the end, Huo An kills Tiberius.
So the villain is dead, the battle is won, but the cost was massive.
Which leads us to the resolution, the aftermath. The Chinese emperor is impressed by the bravery of these Roman survivors. He grants them the right to establish their own city.
And they name it Regum, or in Chinese, Licken.
Which translates to something resembling legion. This is the key connection the movie is trying to make.
It's the whole point.
The survivors of the Wild Geese Gate join the protection squad, and they move a shrine to this new city to honor the fallen, specifically Lucius.
But then, and this is one of those things that I find so fascinating about this movie, it doesn't just end there. We get a time jump.
A massive time jump, thousands of years. We cut to the present day.
Archaeologists. They are uncovering the ruins of this city.
They stumble upon the site, and the source mentions they learn of its tragic history via 3D reconstruction.
Wait, via 3D reconstruction? Like they have a hologram machine or something?
The source isn't specific on the technology, but it implies a high-tech visualization of the past. Upon seeing this reconstruction of the history, the bravery, the sacrifice, the archaeologists decide to leave the site undisturbed.
They let Regum rest in peace.
They do.
It's a very sentimental way to frame the story. It's telling the audience, this is real history you just watched. It frames the entire movie as a ghost story that we've just witnessed.
which is a bold claim considering, well, we'll get to the history in a moment. But first, we have to talk about how this thing was actually made, because the production context explains a lot about the film's scale and its quirks.
Oh, absolutely. This wasn't some indie project shot in a backyard. This is a juggernaut.
A beast of a production.
U.S. $65 million budget. That's huge for a non-Hollywood production in 2015.
It was financed by a consortium including Sparkle Roll, YA Brothers, and Tencent. At the time, this was a record-breaking budget for a Chinese-financed movie. They were swinging for the fences, trying to prove they could make a blockbuster that looked and felt as big as anything coming out of Los Angeles.
And they filmed it in the real-deal locations. The Gobi Desert. Dunhuang. This wasn't all sound stages.
No, and the conditions were reportedly grueling.
Right.
Extreme heat, sand getting into everything, heavy costumes. You can just imagine John Cusack and Adrien Brody in full Roman regalia armor, capes, heavy leather, sweating it out in the Gobi Desert.
Oh, man.
That adds a layer of realism or perhaps exhaustion you can't get on a green screen.
And the release strategy was aggressive. They dropped this movie on February 19, 2015.
Which is the first day of the Chinese New Year. That is the prime slot. It's like releasing a movie on Christmas Day in the U.S., but bigger. It's the time when families go to the cinema together.
And in IMAX 3D.
Maximizing the ticket price and the spectacle.
I noticed in the notes that the U.S. release was a bit different. Lionsgate premiere picked it up later in September, but they took some scissors to it.
They did. The original runtime was 127 minutes. The U.S. version was cut down to 103 minutes.
That's nearly 25 minutes of footage gone.
24 minutes.
24 minutes? That's an entire act of a movie. That's a massive amount of content.
It is, and usually those cuts come at the expense of character development and pacing, which might explain some of the reception issues in the West. If you remove the bonding scenes, the building bridges moments, the slow conversations between Cusack and Chan,
the ending tragedy feels less earned.
Exactly. It becomes just an action movie rather than a character drama.
Well, let's talk about that reception, because this is truly a tale of two markets. The divide is stark.
It really is. In China, Dragon Blade was a monster hit.
Opening day, $18.7 million. Opening weekend, $33 million. It topped the box office.
In total, it earned over $120 million in China alone. By financial standards, this was a massive success. It validated Jackie Chan's pivot to these grand historical epics.
It showed that the Chinese audience was hungry for this kind of East meets West spectacle, seeing their own history intertwined with the great Roman Empire.
For sure. But then we look at the Western critics, and oh boy, it's like they watched a completely different film.
A different story entirely.
On Rotten Tomatoes, it sits at a 36% approval rating.
The phrases used are pretty brutal. Hot mess, dull story, choppy editing.
IGN gave it a 6 out of 10, calling the story rubbish, but praising the fight scenes.
Classic Jackie Chan caveat. The plot makes no sense, but look at him go.
Movie Exclusive was even harsher, calling it a spectacular misfire for Cusack and Brody. There seems to be a disconnect where Western critics couldn't get past the tonal shifts. You know, Jackie Chan movies often oscillate between slapstick, melodrama, and serious action, or the editing, which was likely exacerbated by that U.S. cut we mentioned.
Right, that cut is huge.
Whereas the spectacle and the sentiment resonated much more with the domestic audience in China.
Although Variety and The Hollywood Reporter were a bit nicer. They praised the technical details in the battle scene, so it wasn't universally hated, just mixed. They appreciated the craft, if not the story.
There is one other reaction we need to mention, which is the Indian media response.
Right. The source notes this was overwhelmingly negative.
Yes. The Hindu criticized the lack of subtlety, calling the characters cardboard. And there were accusations of the film being Chinese propaganda.
Propaganda? Why?
Likely due to the portrayal of the Silk Road Protection Squad as these benevolent peacekeepers of the region, imposing order on the unruly tribes like the Indians and Jianyu.
I can see that.
Yeah.
It's interesting how a movie about peace managed to annoy so many different groups of critics for different reasons.
That's the nature of international co-productions sometimes. Cultural nuances don't always translate. What looks like patriotism and stability in one market looks like propaganda and control in another.
Okay, we've delayed it long enough. We have to address the elephant in the room. Or rather, the Roman in the room. Is any of this true?
Right.
Did Romans actually fight alongside the Han Dynasty? Because if this is real, my history textbook skipped a really cool chapter.
This is where we get into the historical truth segment. The short answer is almost certainly not like this, but it's not completely made up either.
But there is a theory, right? The movie didn't just pull this out of thin air.
correct. The film relies heavily on a hypothesis proposed by a historian named Homer H. Dubs in 1941.
Okay, let's unpack the Dubs theory, because it's a fun one, even if it's controversial.
So go back to 53 BC, the Battle of Cara. This was a disastrous defeat for Rome against the Parthians. Marcus Licinius Crassus, the father of the blind boy in the movie, was killed there.
One of Rome's worst days.
Definitely. And the theory goes, that some of the prisoners escaped the Parthians. Dubs speculated that Roman prisoners of war were moved by the Parthians to their eastern border to serve as border guards, basically mercenaries. And eventually these men might have clashed with Han troops or even defected to China to escape their Parthian captors.
And the evidence for this is the town name.
That's a big part of it, yes. There is a town named Lekin in Gansu province. Dubs argued that Lekin sounds like legion, and therefore it was founded by Roman legionaries.
That feels like a stretch. Lekin sounds like legion. That's the smoking gun.
Well, Dubs tried to connect a few other dots. There were historical records of a specific military formation used by foreign troops in a battle around that time that looked like a fish scale formation.
Okay.
Dubs interpreted this as the Roman testudo, or tortoise formation, where soldiers lock shields over their heads.
Okay, that's a bit more compelling.
Yep.
Fish scales, tortoise shells. I can see the visual link.
And there have been claims of local villagers in that region having Caucasian features. Green eyes, lighter hair, aquiline noses. This has fueled the local tourism industry significantly.
But does that hold up to modern science?
Not really. Genetic testing has been done, and while it shows some mixed ancestry, the results have been inconclusive or attributed to other Silk Road travelers. You have to remember, the Silk Road was a highway for genes as well as silk.
So people from all over were there?
Sogdians, Persians, Turks, they were mixing there for centuries. The expert consensus today is pretty clear. Most historians do not accept the Dubs theory as fact.
So no lost legion building fortresses with Jackie Chan?
Archaeological evidence is lacking. No Roman armor, no coins found in the specific context that would prove a legion was there. The first undisputed contact between Rome and China didn't happen until much later, 161 AD. That was an embassy sent by Emperor Antoninus Pius or Marcus Aurelius.
So Dragon Blade is basically taking a very loose what-if scenario and turning it into a definitive historical blockbuster.
Precisely. It takes a footnote of speculation and builds an entire city named Regum out of it. It prioritizes the myth over the math of history. It's creating a legend.
But you know what? Even if it's fake, it's such a cool concept. The idea that these two ancient superpowers touched fingertips in the desert.
It is, and it serves a narrative purpose.
So bringing this all together, Dragon Blade is a weird beast. It's a massive hit in China, a critical flop in the West. It stars 3 major actors who feel like they're in different movies.
They really do.
Can's doing a noble epic, Cusack is doing a solemn drama, and Brody is doing something very intense.
And yet, it represents something significant. It's an attempt to bridge the gap between Hollywood storytelling and Chinese blockbuster filmmaking. It's messy, yes, but it's ambitious. It's trying to say that these two cultures, which often view each other with suspicion, have a shared history of cooperation, even if they have to invent a little bit of it to make the point.
It's definitely not boring. If you want to see John Cusack teaching Roman engineering to Han Dynasty laborers, while Adrien Brody chews the scenery so hard there's no set left, this is your movie.
And it leaves us with a provocative thought. Even if the history is debunked, why does the idea of a lost legion in China fascinate us so much? Why do we keep coming back to this specific theory?
Yeah, why do we want this to be true?
I think it speaks to a desire to find ancient connections in a globalized world. We want to believe that even 2,000 years ago, East and West weren't just isolated islands. We want to believe they met, they fought, and maybe, just maybe, they understood each other.
Even if we have to invent the story to make it happen.
We want validation that globalization isn't new.
That is a great point. We want the world to be smaller than it was. We want to find that shared DNA.
Exactly. It makes the world feel more connected.
Well, if you have a chance, look up the images of the Roman armor fighting alongside Han armor. Historical accuracy aside, it looks incredible.
Yeah.
That's a wrap on Dragon Blade. Thanks for joining us on this trip down the Silk Road. We'll see you on the next deep dive.